Welcome to the Sound Advice Podcast, a resource for entrepreneurs and small businesses looking for honest insights and go-to strategies for digital marketing. I'm Kelvin, and my wife Phyllis.
Hey.
And I will share what's working, what's changing, and how to navigate the sometimes unpredictable world of business ownership.
Yes, we're experts at figuring things out. Well, figuring them out eventually. And we're here to share it all. The good, the bad, and the stuff we've learned about working at home together every day, all day. So let's jump in. Hi, welcome to the Sound Advice Podcast. I'm Phyllis, and I'm here today with Kelvin.
Hey.
Who's going to be podcasting with me actually for several episodes in a row. So, lucky us.
Her mistake.
All right. So today's podcast is about podcasting.
Yep.
Yeah. So part of the reason we're doing this is because podcasting continues to be a growing and popular way for businesses and organizations of all type to get their word out.
Start watching. You'll see on TV where everybody that's on a show has their own podcast.
Yes.
Days.
Yeah, like everybody on ESPN has a podcast. Everybody on all the news shows have podcasts. It's kind of crazy. So anyway, it's continuing to grow. And it's not just the people who are podcasting. New podcasts are coming out all the time, but the audience is continuing to grow. In fact, there's a company, Statista, I think. I don't know if I said that right.
I believe it's Statista.com.
Statista.com. Okay. And I'll put this in the show notes. So if you want to go read all of this for yourself, you can. They've been tracking podcast statistics in about 18 different metrics for a number of years. And to give you an example, in 2006, 22% of the adult population was aware of the term podcasting. In 2017, that was 60%. I think it's probably safe to say in 2018, that number's even higher.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. In a recent survey, 96% of 18 to 29-year-olds and 93% of 60 and older, so, the old people are getting in on the podcasting too, have heard the term. So,
well, I'm 55.
No, we're old. So podcasting's not just something that sort of like hip millennials do. People from kind of through the whole spectrum, all the way from 18 to 60 and above are aware of podcasting. In 2008, 10% had reported listening to a podcast in the last month. And by 2017, that number had climbed to 25%. Now, they break down how they got those numbers and where they came from, and I will link to that. I'm not going to go into all that right now. I just wanted to share some of those numbers, though, because I want people to realize that podcasting is it's not a passé sort of form of content. It's something that's still growing. And
part of that's because podcasts can be listened to almost any time, when you're in the shower, where you're in the car, where you're walking your dog or at the gym or working out. You can listen to a podcast almost any time.
Yeah, absolutely. And or part of your commute, that sort of thing. In fact, a lot of people, I think, from what we understand, build podcasting kind of into their schedule, right? We know there's certain people are listen to their favorite podcast when they, go for a walk or when they pick the kids up or whatever they're doing in their life, which is kind of cool. Another statistic that's interesting, I think, is that 85% of people who do listen to podcasts report that they listen to the whole podcast, which is kind of cool, right? So YouTube, in the video world, they have a number of statistics, and I don't have this in front of me, but there's a lot of YouTube videos that never get seen or rarely get seen 100%.
I don't know why, but I don't have time for videos. It's something you got to sit and you got to watch. You know what I mean? Unless you're going to be able to put it on a screen while you're working out somewhere, or, you got your laptop or whatever kind of device that you can use. It's the only way you can actually just sit and kind of look at it. You can't drive and listen, watch a video.
Well, you shouldn't anyway. Yeah.
This is true.
Yeah, maybe you could, but maybe you shouldn't. So, anyway, and video is also a powerful way to get your info out there. They're just sort of different. And I think the other nice reason I think that podcasts are continuing to grow, honestly, it's because
podcasts have superpowers. They have lots of functions. They can educate, they can entertain, they can inform, inspire, they can make you laugh, they can make you cry. They just connect with people.
Right. Part of the reason I think too, people feel really connected in podcasts are they really connect with the host or the people who are talking on the podcast. And some podcasts like NPR has a number of podcasts with different hosts and different people, that sort of thing. But a lot of podcasts are like our podcast, right? Where it's me and you and maybe sometimes a guest. But people kind of, get to know who you are, and they also feel like they sort of,
it's personal.
Yeah, it's personal, I think.
They have podcasts have a voice. I mean, we talk about the voice of a blog post and the way somebody writes, but this is a real, live human voice with subtleties of inflection, emotion, emphasis. The voice breathes life into content.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, too, there are, for some of you who may be listening to this, and maybe you're already really good at creating good content. Maybe you have a great, well-written, very popular blog, for example. If you do, that's great. But I can guarantee you that there are people who would really, really love your content and your information who will never read your blog. Not because it's not good or well done. That's just not the way they prefer to consume information. So
right.
Part of the reason we encourage people and businesses in particular to embrace podcasting is because they're going to reach an audience that they probably haven't really reached before, and that, really are never going to read, no matter how well and how great the podcast or the blog post might be. There are just certain people that were never going to read that kind of content or that kind of information.
Well, again, reading is not the same as listening on a podcast either. You got to actually read it. It's hard to read while you're driving down the road and
right.
You're working out. It's hard
right.
to read.
Right. That's true.
So you can reach a lot more
yeah.
people. You can target
yeah.
your audience. You're basically looking for that audience of one where you connect with a person and you're just talking to them at that particular moment instead of, just an article or some other form of media.
That's right. And it allows you to sort of have this approach to where you can go really deep with your audience, right? You can really connect with them on a much deeper level than you're ever going to be able to connect to necessarily with a written form of content.
Yeah, I read a good statement. It was, don't go wide, go deep. Listeners are looking for direct, one-to-one relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's one of the biggest marketing trends right now in 2018, and they're talking about into 2019, even 2020, is this, and the big people that pay a ton of money to figure this stuff out or research this and big brands are trying to figure out how can we segment our marketing to such an extent that it feels really super personal. And podcasting, obviously, it's already here. Like, you can already do it that way, which is really great.
Yeah, and podcasts are easy. There's lots of options, all kinds of different styles that you can get into just to get started, to get your content in front of people. I mean, there's just lots of ways you can get started with a phone these days. Just pull out your phone, have a recording device on your phone, and talk to your phone. And of course, then you got to edit.
Yeah,
Put it out for the world to hear. But yes, you can start with a phone.
Yeah, well, it is easy in that regard. It's also easy for a lot of people because, for example, okay, let's take Scott Monty. Used to work for Ford. He was an executive at a very high C-level executive. He actually started in social media on Twitter, and he got well known, and now he has a pretty well followed podcast. But here's the thing too: if you are in a corporate,
what's he talk about?
Right now, he actually talks a lot about trends.
Okay,
sort of like trends, a little bit of
like podcasting,
with the business focus for sure.
Okay, and
consumer trends. But here's another interesting thing. So again, if you're in a business and you're a small business like Kelvin and I, we're, just us, and we have a handful of other people that help us out, or maybe you're in a larger company, it's going to be much easier for your CEO, or if it's the head of your marketing team or the head of your R&D team, whoever is going to maybe do the podcast in your company, it's all so much easier to probably get them to sit down and talk with you or do a short interview style or whatever you kind of come up with, then it's going to be for that person to actually engage through podcasts and social media and really raise their profile to such an extent that people feel like they know them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, talking's easier than writing. And again, we come back to the voice thing where, you have a conversation with somebody, they hear the inflections of your voice, and talking to me is a whole lot easier than writing.
Yeah, it is. Well, and think about this too, right? Part of this, I think, is just because our human brains were sort of hardwired to sort of listen and recognize. So even very infants, before they can talk or walk or do a lot of other things, they can recognize the voice of their parents or people that are in their life, on a daily basis. They recognize that. So podcasting, I think that's part of the reason why it's so powerful too. People, we can kind of recognize, and you feel like, them. There are people whose podcasts I listen to that I've never met in person, obviously. But if I heard them speak, even if I couldn't see them, like if they were behind me talking to somebody else, I would know immediately who they are because I've heard their voice so many times.
Right, right.
And that kind of connection doesn't happen in writing.
I do a lot of business remote. I happen to worked with a gentleman that I hadn't seen in over a year, but I could have picked him out in a crowd just by his voice.
Exactly. Right. And that's not something we really have to learn. Like, it's just sort of an ingrained thing that we just our brain kind of does.
Not that I hadn't seen him. I had never met the man. But I could have picked him out of a crowd with his voice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. To get back to your point about being easier, the other nice thing about podcasting, there really are no rules. You can have some fun with it. You can do, interview style podcasts are very popular.
Right.
For a lot of reasons.
And right now, so are news and current events. We mentioned,
right.
Just about every news person out there
right.
has got some type of podcast
right.
going.
And then there are the review type podcasts where, again, I think I mentioned ESPN, but like the Sportscaster, right? So now we just had college football games over the weekend. And so now they're all like, doing their podcast and breaking down. Like
they're talking heads.
Yes, who did good and, who needs to work.
And now we're talking heads.
Yeah. The other nice thing that you can do, because some people come to me, one of the questions I get a lot is, people are worried that they may not be that interesting or that people might not find their information interesting.
Well, I would believe that at times, yes.
Yeah.
Who wants to listen to me?
Yeah, but I think there's a little bit of that, but I think too, in podcasting, there really is an audience for everyone if you're putting out good information that's relevant to your audience. So you got to do a little bit of your work here. You need to know who you're talking to and who your audience is.
Well, be the expert.
Exactly. Be the expert. If you are, if you're teaching or if you're explaining, or sometimes if you're just commenting, one of the things I think is really powerful, and some of the best podcasts out there really do just break down what's happening in current events, or
they're the expert.
Yes. Or be the expert, or they're breaking down maybe what's happening in their industry. So they're not trying to break news, right? They're trying to take that information, maybe that's happening on a really large scale, and break it down for their listeners so that it has some context, and so that maybe people can figure out, like, what does that mean for me? And, what can we do with that information?
Instead of what they get in 30 minutes at 6:00 in the evening, instead of going wide, you go deeper.
Right.
Just like we mentioned earlier.
Right. Yeah. So one of the other things about podcasting is that I find it very forgiving because most podcasts, not all, but most podcasts are recorded, and then you have the opportunity to have it edited. So if there's lots of ums and ahs like I do, we can take some of those out. If you need to pause and collect your thoughts, or you need to refer to your notes about something, you can do that.
It's not live.
That's right.
It's not live.
You can do it.
You can practice. You can go like that and cut that out, or you can leave that in, or however you want to handle yours, but you can practice. You can listen back to yourself. You can do a number of things, edit in different ways to, because it's not live. You can make yourself, it's very forgiving, like you said.
Yeah, it is. It's also very, I think, efficient. So we were using the example before of like getting maybe the CEO of a company who wants to have like a personal connection with their consumers. If with a little bit of planning, if you have a team and with your podcast production team, you put a little bit of planning together, you could get that CEO to probably sit down and record 2 or 3 podcasts maybe in an afternoon really quickly.
Right. record multiple shows at once.
Right.
Why not? That's what we're going to do. We have clients that do that as well. They sit down and they'll do 2, 3, 4 episodes, however many they have. They know how long it takes to record their episode. They sit down now and they'll record 3 or more at a time. It's definitely time effective when it comes to doing that, because you can block out a series of times. Yep. It's not something you have to do every week, or
right.
Especially if you're only going to do it every other week or something of that nature. You can do several months at once and be done with it.
That's right. Yeah. And for really busy people or people that have lots of maybe that travel a fair amount, may not always be, around and just sitting at their desk. Obviously, I don't think many people have jobs like that anymore, but that it's an easier way to get it done for sure. I think, which is another reason why I think, again, podcasts can be so effective. I know after listening to all of this, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I should really podcast. So I am going to throw this out there. I've just put together a guide. It just went out live to the world just in the last couple days. So you can go to thesoundadvicesales.com/start your podcast and just type that like it's all one big word. And it will give you, you'll get to a page where you can enter your email address and download our Getting Started guide. It's got a ton of good information about all these kinds of things, what type of podcasts, how to get things rolling, the first 4 or 5 things you need to do to get it figured out. So if you want a podcast,
not that tough.
Huh?
It's not that tough.
It isn't. Or if somebody in your team or you want somebody in your company to podcast, we want you to be able to show them how easy it is. If you have questions about podcasting, let us know. We're going to be doing a couple more episodes about this, and we're going to get into some of the details about the tech part of it. I think for some people that's a little bit intimidating.
It is. It's like I said, you can get started with a phone. Some people, will spend up to $100 on the mic, USB. Some people go as far as to get little mixers that can be, you can plug 2 mics in it and plug it into your laptop. Some people go as far as mixing boards and large, expensive $1,000 mics. Right. There's a number of people who have shows on TV these days that show them in front of a mic.
Right.
That's an expensive setup.
Yeah, and some people do record in a studio or go to a sound studio
but
in their
it's not
city.
Required.
But it is not required. In fact, I would say most, I don't have numbers on this. I don't have a way to find it, but I can guarantee you most people who are podcasting very successfully are not doing that. First of all, they're just too busy. They don't have time to go somewhere and deal with all of that. And most people are doing a combination of using maybe their laptop and maybe a good mic. They might even be using, just earbuds. It sort of depends, again, on your audience and the type of podcast you're going to do. But I don't want people to worry about that. So we're going to break all that down next time. Do you have anything else to kind of wrap this up? I feel like we've talked about tons of good reasons to podcast.
Well, we can just go over what we have talked about. Why podcast to start with? Well, you can podcast to grow your audience. It's an up-and-coming medium. It's the ability to target your audience. It's easier with more options and styles that you can, get started easily, and you can run multitudes of types of shows that you want to, to get your content out.
Yeah. And the last thing I think I would say too is you made this point really well earlier. What was that you said about going deep?
Don't go wide, go deep.
Right. I think if nothing else, and because of the way that marketing is sort of dealing with this right now, the ability to really target and really make these deep connections with your audience, whether that's other business people or if it's individual consumers or moms or teenagers or, people who like cats, whatever, it's significant. It's pretty cool. So, all right. I think we're going to leave it at that. Thank you guys all for listening. And the show notes will be on the website at thesoundadvicesales.com. Go to the
soundadvicesales.com.
Thank you. At the podcast tab, you'll see the latest show episode with the notes. And we'll take it from there. Thanks for being here.
Leave us a message, leave us a note, leave us a review. Tell us how awesome we are. If you don't like us, don't leave anything.
Okay.
Anyway, that'll do it.
Thanks a lot.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the Sound Advice Podcast. Be sure to visit soundadvicesales.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. If you loved this episode of the Sound Advice Podcast, head over to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time,